Thomas Wright had been preparing for this service since the day William Hartwell walked into his parlor 6 months ago and said, "I want you to bury me, Thomas."
Where is the real funeral director? I won't have a black man running my husband's wake.
Mrs. Hartwell, your husband made specific arrangements. I have his service folder right here.
I don't care what he arranged. I'm hiring a proper firm. You are finished here. Call Halstead and Sons. I want them here within the hour. And get this man out of my sight.
Thomas said nothing. He picked up the sealed manila envelope from the casket, the one William had pressed into his hand with a quiet instruction, and tucked it under his arm.
David, the lilies are fresh. Mr. Hartwell loved white lilies.
This is wrong. Mr. Wright has done nothing to deserve this.
3 hours before the wake, and 3 days before a will. Reading that would crush Linda Hartwell under a truth she never saw coming. 6 months earlier, William Hartwell, still strong at 71, had walked into Wright Funeral Home with a cane and a question.
Thomas, my first wife was laid out here in '89. You were young, but you did it right. I've never forgotten.
My great-grandfather started this place in 1893, Mr. Hartwell. We've been serving families ever since, properly.
I want you to handle everything when my time comes. No one else, Thomas. You understand? My father used to say there are 2 things a man can't choose, his birth and his burial. But the second one, he can trust a friend for.
Your father and my father had an understanding. I'll honor it. Whatever you need, William.
After William left that day, Thomas opened his father's old leather journal. A single handwritten line, dated 1971, read, "A handshake is a contract the law can't break." That afternoon, William Hartwell had placed a sealed manila envelope in Thomas's hands. "Keep this," he'd said. "It's the only copy. Give it to my attorney when the time comes."
You trusted me with more than your body, William, and this will prove it.
Linda Hartwell had thrown him out without asking a single question. But she had no idea that inside that envelope was the one clause that could strip her of everything. Linda Hartwell drove back to her antebellum mansion on Rutledge Avenue, already dialing the number for Halstead and Sons.
Yes, this is Linda Hartwell. I need you to take over a wake immediately. The address is 14 Legary Street. My late husband had some quaint arrangements. I require a more refined director.
Halstead and Sons, a chain with cold white LED signs, accepted the 6-figure invoice without hesitation.
I am not having a black man preside over my husband. This is Charleston, and he didn't understand that. William was old and sentimental. He didn't see color the way normal people do.
She ordered fresh flowers from a New York designer, a string quartet, and a catered reception. None of it was what William would have wanted.
Mr. Halstead, I expect perfection. My husband was a titan of industry, and he deserves that.
3 hours after firing Thomas Wright, Linda Hartwell poured herself a glass of champagne and looked out at the city, satisfied she'd restored order. She didn't notice the text from William's attorney, Jonathan Sterling, asking about the will reading. She muted her phone and went to bed. Thomas Wright drove home through the Charleston rain, his Sunday best still immaculate, the sealed envelope resting on the passenger seat.
David, make sure the parlor is tidy for Halstead's people, and hang the lilies high. He liked them high.
David's reply was quiet, almost broken. Thomas ended the call and pulled into his driveway. His house was small, plain, but the front porch light was on, a habit his father taught him, always leave a light for the lost. Inside, he removed his jacket and walked to the mantel. A framed photograph of his father, Ezekiel Wright, stared back at him.
He would have told me to keep my head high.
He sat in his father's old armchair, placed the sealed envelope on the side table, and didn't open it. For an hour, he sat in the quiet, the rain tapping against the window, and replayed the afternoon in his mind.
She'll learn. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but William made sure of it.
Outside, the rain slowed. Inside, Thomas closed his eyes, the envelope within reach, waiting for a call he knew would come. The next morning, Halstead and Sons transformed the parlor into a gaudy display of silk and strobe lights. The wake began with a pop song instead of Amazing Grace.
The playlist says, Greatest Hits. I thought it was a celebration.
This is a funeral, you fool. Cut that noise.
The eulogy folder, handwritten notes from William's daughter, had been left at the Halstead office.
Those are my father's oldest friends. Why are they in the back?
Mrs. Crane, seating was first come.
This is a catastrophe. Where is the damn eulogy?
The quartet played a jazz number. Guests looked around in confusion. William's sister dabbed her eyes with anger, not grief. Thomas's assistant David stood by the lilies, watching the chaos unfold, his heart breaking for the man he honored. Linda Hartwell stood in the wreckage of her choices, her phone buzzing with texts from Jonathan Sterling she couldn't ignore any longer. Linda silenced the buzzing phone and slipped it into her purse. Jonathan Sterling would have to wait. She had a reputation to save.
Linda, why was Mr. Wright dismissed? He was the only director my father ever mentioned.
I wanted something more appropriate. Halstead is reputable. This was just a few mistakes.
William's sister pulled Mary aside and whispered, "This is not what your father wanted. That man is an imposter."
You didn't even ask what he wanted, did you?
They all think they know what's best, as if living with him for 5 years means nothing.
At home, she ripped the Halstead and Sons invoice into shreds. The fee was $7,000, and the humiliation was priceless.
None of this would have happened if that man hadn't tried to manipulate William in the first place.
Across town, Mary sat in her father's study, staring at a photograph of him shaking hands with Thomas Wright. She knew he had planned for something like this. Then Linda's phone buzzed again. Jonathan Sterling's message. The reading is tomorrow. Mr. Wright's presence is required. Please confirm. She read it 3 times, a cold knot tightening. The call came at 9 sharp. Jonathan Sterling's baritone was measured, but Linda heard the edge.
The reading is tomorrow at 2. I trust Mr. Wright will be there, as the will requires.
Absolutely, Jonathan. I've already spoken with him. He's looking forward to it.
A pause. Jonathan had heard about the wake, and Linda's tongue was too smooth.
His presence is non-negotiable, Mrs. Hartwell. It's a legal prerequisite.
You have my word. Thomas Wright will be seated right beside me.
The lie left her lips with a practiced ease, but her fingers tightened around the phone.
Once the money is released, no one will care who presided.
Jonathan Sterling set the receiver down, uneasy. He slid the will from its envelope and read the clause again. Linda placed the phone on the marble table, convinced she'd handled it. She had no idea she'd just sealed her fate. Jonathan Sterling unsealed the will for a final review. The lamp on his desk flickered. He found the clause on page 6. He read it once, then again, his face draining of color. Linda had fired the one man required to be present.
Mrs. Hartwell, this is Jonathan. The clause is binding. Call me immediately.
She never answered. She was across town, toasting her victory. The document spelled it out. If Thomas Wright did not attend the reading, the inheritance would bypass Linda entirely.
William knew she would try this. He prepared for it.
At midnight, he sent a final message. I hope you understand what you've done. Then he set the folder down and turned off the light. Tomorrow would be a reckoning. Across town, a duplicate of that envelope sat on Thomas Wright's side table, waiting. The conference room began to fill. Mary Hartwell Crane arrived first, wearing her father's old college ring, her eyes swollen. Linda Hartwell swept in minutes later, her black dress crisp, a practiced smile on her face. The air chilled.
Mary, darling, today is a formality. Let's not make it harder than it needs to be.
You have no idea what you've done, do you?
Jonathan Sterling entered, his face unreadable. He nodded to them and took his place at the head of the table.
Please be seated. I'll begin the reading when all parties are present.
He placed the thick manila envelope in front of him, his fingers resting on it like a judge's gavel.
This is it. The Hartwell fortune. And I won't share it with a single one of them.
A clock on the wall ticked past 2. The room was quiet, but the tension was a living thing. Then Jonathan lifted his gaze to Linda, and everyone in the room felt the air change.
Mrs. Hartwell, before we begin, where is Mr. Wright?
I let him go. There was no need for him to be here.
You fired him. You told me on the phone he'd be present.
I made other arrangements. This is my decision, not William's.
Jonathan closed the will folder with a crack like a gunshot, then folded his hands on top.
The primary trust cannot be read. The will demands Mr. Wright's presence as a binding condition.
What clause? This is a lie to cheat me out of my inheritance.
Without him, the estate passes to Mary and her brother. Your share is limited to the prenuptial allowance.
Linda's blood turned to ice. She stared at Jonathan, unable to form a word. Mary looked at the old photograph on the table, the one of her father and Thomas Wright, and the truth burned clear.
This is a racist clause. He couldn't have trusted a black man more than his own wife.
The prenuptial agreement limits your claim to $500,000. That is all you will receive.
$500,000. The sum was pocket change compared to the Hartwell oil empire she had expected to control.
I won't accept this. I'll bring him back myself.
She snatched her purse from beneath the table and strode toward the door without another look at Mary.
Mr. Sterling, was this really my father's doing?
It was, and he was a man who never broke a promise.
In the anteroom, Linda shot a frantic look at her phone. No signal from Thomas. She'd have to do this the hard way. Mary met Jonathan's eyes over the closed will folder. She did not smile, but the bitterness of the wake began to soften. The room fell back into silence. The will sat unread, and the fortune hung on the shoulders of a man Linda Hartwell had insulted 3 days earlier.
Daddy knew she'd do this. He planned it.
He loved your mother deeply, and he loved Mr. Wright like a brother.
I need to talk to Thomas. If she gets to him first, she'll ruin it.
Call him. You are the one he'll listen to. I'll hold the reading.
Mary walked into the hallway, the photograph still in her hand. She pulled out her father's old phone, one of the few things Linda hadn't erased.
Please don't let her have ruined this forever.
She pressed call. The line rang once, twice. Mary's fingers tightened on the frame. 4 rings, then voicemail. Mary took a shaky breath and leaned against the wall.
Mr. Wright, it's Mary Crane. Please call me as soon as you can. There's something my father wanted you to know.
She hung up and stared at the screen. Across town, Thomas Wright's phone glowed in the dark, but he did not answer. Linda's Mercedes skidded to a stop on the wet street in front of Thomas Wright's modest house. The porch light was on, a habit his father taught him. She marched up the steps and hammered on the door with both fists, her mascara smearing fresh in the rain.
Open this door. You are coming with me right now.
Mrs. Hartwell, it's late.
My husband's will requires your presence. You'll be there tomorrow.
For your husband's memory? Or for your money?
The question hit her like a slap. She opened her mouth, but no answer came.
Just say yes. Lie again.
When you are ready to answer that honestly, I'll listen. Good night, Mrs. Hartwell.
The door closed with a soft click. Linda stood in the rain a full minute before her pride let her retreat to the car. At midnight, Mary Hartwell Crane dialed Thomas Wright's number again. This time, the line picked up on the 3rd ring.
Mary, I saw your missed call. Is everything all right?
It's not. The will reading. Daddy made a clause. It won't be valid without you present.
I know. Linda was here an hour ago. She couldn't answer the question that matters.
She doesn't deserve this. But my father trusted you more than anyone. Please, Mr. Wright, for him.
This is what William would have wanted. For your father, Mary, I'll come. I'll be there tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
She hung up and sat in the dark, the photograph of her father and Thomas resting on her lap. Across town, Thomas set the receiver down and picked up the sealed envelope. Tomorrow, he would open it with Jonathan Sterling. Thomas Wright entered the conference room, sealed envelope in hand. Every person rose except Linda Hartwell. He stood beside Jonathan Sterling and placed the envelope on the mahogany table.
Before we open this will, you need to understand why Mr. Wright's presence is non-negotiable. In 1971, William's father shook hands with Thomas's father right here in Charleston. They agreed that the trust would never pass to anyone who refused to shake the hand of the man burying them.
Linda's spine stiffened. The room grew colder.
That handshake was a covenant. William embedded it into his estate so no one could break it.
He planned this before he even met me.
Mary looked at the photograph in her lap and felt her father's presence for the first time since the wake. Jonathan lifted the folder. Now, with Mr. Wright present, the reading can proceed. Jonathan Sterling unfolded the will and began to read, his voice steady, every word dropping into the silence like stones.
I bequeath the controlling trust of Hartwell Oil and Shipping to my children, Mary Crane and Robert Hartwell, in equal shares.
Linda's hand flew to her lips. Jonathan's eyes never left the page.
This trust is conditioned upon the presence of Thomas Wright at the reading. Absent him, the contingency clause activates.
He read the clause that sealed her fate, each word a nail in a coffin.
If Mr. Wright is absent because of Linda Hartwell, the trust goes to my children. She gets only $500,000.
Linda shot to her feet, but Jonathan's raised hand froze her in place.
The will is explicit, Mrs. Hartwell. You are entitled to nothing beyond the prenuptial allowance.
Mary turned to Thomas, tears welling. He gave a slight nod, his own eyes glistening. Linda slumped back into her chair. The handshake she had mocked had just stripped her of an empire. Linda shoved her chair back so hard it toppled against the mahogany wall. She didn't look at anyone.
This is a racist conspiracy. You'll hear from my lawyers.
Outside, her Mercedes peeled away, tires screaming on the wet Charleston street.
Mr. Wright, thank you. For my father, for all of us. I am so sorry for what she did.
He was my friend. I'll give him one more service, a proper memorial, and I won't charge a cent.
I can't let you do that for free.
It's not for you, Mary. It's for William.
Linda Hartwell dragged herself into her empty mansion and stared at the prenuptial agreement on the hall table. $500,000. Pocket change in the empire she had expected to control. Across town, Mary and Thomas stood in the twilight, already planning a service that would honor a man and a handshake. The following Sunday, Wright Funeral Home, filled with a crowd, black and white, old money and new, drawn by the quiet dignity of a man they had almost lost.
William Hartwell once told me the measure of a man is in how he keeps his word. He kept his, across 2 generations, with a handshake. That handshake was a promise. No amount of money could break it, and no amount of prejudice could erase it.
Mary rose from the first row and placed a single white lily on the casket, her hand trembling only slightly.
Rest well, my friend. Your children will carry that trust, and I will always be here to remind them what a handshake means.
The organist played a soft hymn. The crowd stood in silence, many reaching for handkerchiefs. After the amen, a line wound through the parlor, men and women waiting to shake the hand of the director their city had nearly forgotten. Thomas pressed each palm with his weathered hands, murmuring thanks, his father's framed portrait watching from the wall. In her mansion across town, Linda Hartwell sat alone, staring at a $500,000 check that felt like an insult. When the last guest left, Thomas removed his white gloves and let the tears he'd held for 6 days finally fall. The mansion on Rutledge Avenue was silent, except for the tick of a grandfather clock Linda had never bothered to wind. She had traded a fortune for her pride, and now she had neither. She found the photograph in a drawer, her and William on their wedding day, and tore it in half before the tears came.
He loved me once, but he loved a handshake more.
She walked to the window and watched the empty street. No one was coming. The man she had mocked had buried her husband with more dignity than she could ever purchase.
This isn't about race. It was never about race. It was about who William trusted to bury him.
The prenuptial agreement lay on the table, The $500,000, a cold reminder of the empire she had thrown away.
A check will arrive, but it won't buy back a single invitation.
And in the dark of her mansion, Linda Hartwell sat alone, the ghost of a handshake echoing through empty rooms. That evening, on the porch of Wright Funeral Home, Mary Crane sat with Thomas in the last gold light of day.
Your father gave me this photograph years ago. I think it belongs with you now.
He pressed a small sepia print into her hand, the 1971 handshake. Two fathers sealing a promise.
I'll make sure my children know who you are, Mr. Wright, and what this picture means.
Your daddy would be proud, Mary. He always said the future is in the hands of those who remember.
They stood, and Mary extended her hand, not out of obligation, but out of honor. Thomas took it, his weathered palm meeting hers, and the pact passed into a new generation.
A handshake is a contract the law can't break.
Inside the parlor, the portrait of Ezekiel Wright seemed to smile down at them through the window. On the porch, two families, one promise, and a legacy no prejudice could break. The parlor was empty now, but the scent of lilies still hung in the warm light. Thomas removed one white glove, then the other, folding them with the same care he gave the departed. His hand rose to the glass of his father's photograph on the wall. He touched it once, gently. A quiet pride settled in his chest, not for himself, but for the promise he had kept. On the empty casket stand lay a single white lily left by Mary. He lifted it, studied the soft petals, then placed it back with reverence. His father once told him, "The honor is in the hands, not in the thanks." For 6 days, those hands had been questioned, then finally understood. Now, they rested at his sides, steady and at peace. Outside, the morning light touched the sign. Wright Funeral Home, Est, 1893. A new day beginning. And so the oldest black-owned funeral home in Charleston survived, not because it was loud, but because it kept its word. Through 3 generations, the Wrights had buried the powerful and the poor with the same hands. And when a widow tried to erase that history, she only deepened its roots. The handshake of 1971 was never written into any charter, but it was written into every funeral Thomas ever directed. Linda Hartwell learned too late that a promise is stronger than a deed, and that some contracts are signed not with ink, but with respect. Thomas Wright never sought revenge. He only waited for the day when justice would be delivered by the very hands she mocked. And when it came quietly, like a lily on a casket at dawn.